soothing.
This is Penn Sunday School, and to our listening ears, all nature sings and round us rings, music of the spheres.
Brothers and sisters, welcome to Penn Sunday School starring Penn Jillette. My name is Michael Godot. Matt Donnelly, Penn and I, we're broadcasting from the Show Creator Studios in Las Vegas. This is the second part of our discussion about how the new Penn and Teller Masterclass, Penn and Teller Teach the Art of Magic. We've got special guest Piff the Magic Dragon and Handsome Jack here with us. Here he is preaching love, Mr. Penn Jillette.
So we've done the Masterclass. It's out. It's there. People are watching it. People seem to be loving it. Got a wonderful thing from Lawrence O'Donnell saying that he's known us for 25 years and never got as much information as he got in the first 2 minutes of Masterclass.
Now, aren't you preaching love anymore?
I am preaching love.
Okay.
Right now. That's
All right.
part of preaching love. Right. Now, Handsome Jack.
Yes, sir.
Handsome Jack, always on branding.
How did you
LOD is nothing but love, too.
how did you start magic? What was your first, how did you learn it? Very first thing.
I grew up in a tiny little town in Montana where there was no way to learn magic.
Wait a second. You grew up in a tiny little town?
Max Weinberg.
Tell a story.
And so there was...
I was walking on the boardwalk. Go ahead. It's quiet all down the beach. You're a tiny town in Iowa, right?
Montana.
Same thing.
Same thing. No way to learn magic, even though I was really interested in it when I was a kid. So it wasn't until I finished grad school.
Grad school?
After grad
What do you mean there's
school.
no way? They had a library there, didn't they?
They did have a library, but I believe it is almost impossible, unless you're a genius, to learn magic on your own from books.
Well, that's what Teller did.
I said, unless you're a genius. I think you need some guidance and instruction from a human being. Some people can probably learn from books. I was not one of those people. So I read lots of magic books, could barely learn tricks from them. After grad school, I wandered into Tannen's Magic shop in New York City and bought 2 books. And then I was living in Seattle at the time. There's a magic shop in Seattle, Magicians, and I just dove in big time. And I never intended to become a magician, do it professionally or full time, and it just eventually took over my life. I fought it for a long time. I did not want to become a magician, but it just, consumed me.
What had you studied in school that you then threw away?
I got my Master of Fine Arts in theater directing, and that's what I was doing. I was directing plays and, acting and doing other things like that.
You realize that everybody in magic is trying to get out of magic and get into theater and direct plays.
Yeah. Yep. So my fallback plan was not auto mechanics or accounting. It was card tricks. Was my fallback plan.
And Piff, how did you start magic?
I read books. That's the truth.
The best way to say you're a genius after that.
Unfortunately, I read books and learned magic tricks on them and performed them to my friends.
No, but you knew you had an opportunity to meet magicians or go to magic shops or see magic shows, didn't you?
I don't think at the beginning. I mean, maybe. Well, because eventually I found my way to the Fellowship of Christian Magicians. And that was where I got my real schooling.
That's the jackpot right there.
That's what underlies
FCM?
Yeah.
What do they call themselves?
FCME, because it was the Fellowship of Christian Magicians in Europe.
Now, but take away the the Christianity stuff. They were teaching you all the legit stuff, right?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I was like into juggling before I was into magic.
Yay.
And then I liked magic because if something went wrong, you just had a different ending. Whereas juggling was a nightmare. I really can't do perfection. Like,
the reason there's never been a superstar juggler is that when you are juggling, if you juggle long enough, there'll be a time on stage where you look like you're chasing a duck. And you cannot be considered a hero or a superstar if people have ever seen you look like you're chasing a duck. And you do that bend over thing where you're chasing the props and they go, oh, the guy that we thought was a god is now chasing a duck on stage.
I did some early shows and I would just be dropping stuff all the time and it was just horrible.
Yeah.
Whereas
When we would juggle, I guess this is a stupid thing to say, but it's very important that we didn't make mistakes.
Right.
Yeah. We always juggled way below our ability to juggle. You do that too, right?
I
Ken?
do juggle way below my ability, yes. But not really because I'm worried about dropping. I'm just worried about showing up at work sick or something.
But the problem is when your ability is way below what your ability should be. Suddenly you perform at your maximum ability. So I was doing that, and then I sort of moved into magic. But even the magic, over the years, more and more the magic that I do now, I'm much more interested in sort of the situation of the trick rather than
but you have some very good tricks in your show.
Thank you.
There are head scratchers in your show.
I was joking with him the other night in the dressing room. I said, a lot of times the backhanded compliment Piff gets or people around Piff get, which is like, his magic is pretty good, but he's really funny.
I've started to shout. Last night, I absolutely berated the audience. We've got this new trick where a watch is placed into a sock. It's mixed with four other socks, also containing watches. They're all mixed up, and then the dog smells them to try and work out which one the watch is, and they're all destroyed. And then the sock is open, and it's the wrong watch. And then at the end of this, a can of food is opened on stage, and inside the can is a watch that is vacuum sealed inside the dog food. So I pull it out in the vacuum sealed bag, cut it open with scissors, and they take out their pristine watch. Neither Jade or I leave the stage, which is a big thing that we changed, and all this other stuff. Anyway, last night, when I started opening the can, they were like, "There's just no way. There is just no way." When I took the watch out of the can, they was like, "There is no way." When I cut it open, they went, "Oh." And I was like, no, screw you guys. That is absolutely inexplicable. And you applaud appropriately, and then they did. And I'll be honest, I think it was a relief for them. Because I think they were just a bit, nobody expects the magic to be good in my show. And so they were a little bit in shock at that point.
Well, as I joked with you last night, no other magician finishes their creative process being like, okay, how can I make the most incredible thing happen on stage? And how can I make a tiny dog do it?
Yeah, I've got like a 3-phase Rubik's Cube, which is like people just can't understand. If you don't understand how Rubik's Cube magic works, you can't understand. There's no backtracking from it. And then I don't have the decency to pretend that I'm doing it through great skill. I just throw the fact that a dog is solving Rubik's Cubes in their face, and it's just mean. they're like, well, that can't be true.
So what did you learn teaching magic at USC about how people learn magic?
Oh, that's an interesting question that I'm not sure I have an answer to.
Moving on.
I'm also curious about the whole thing. So USC, how many students enroll? How often do you teach it?
It's an elective class for the School of Dramatic Art.
Goodness.
What does elective mean, guys?
Oh, like an extra class. Like you can take a certain amount of electives. It doesn't matter towards your degree.
Wait, it's a class that doesn't matter.
It's a class that doesn't matter at all.
It doesn't count towards your degree, but you just get a certain amount of credits.
For any degree, you have to take a certain amount of elective classes.
Stupid. There's a requirement of stupid.
Yeah. And so people, to describe it as an elective class is just to prove that it's a real class, because nobody believes I'm teaching a real class in magic at a real university.
Right.
So it's an elective class for the School of Dramatic Arts, but it's open to all majors. So I thought it would be mostly theater majors. It's not. It's, the engineers and, all.
Who would have thought? Who would have thought theatre majors give it a wide berth? And a load of maths kids.
And then the engineers are like, what can make me nerdier than I am now?
Exactly.
I know.
So you're an engineer and a magician.
I was at a party last night, and I had a chance of getting laid. I know how to fix that.
No, I mean, when Ian McCallum was starting, he was a firm member of the Juggling Society, wasn't he? Rather.
Here's
Judith Dench. She was a juggler originally.
Yeah.
Dame Dench.
Oh, her 3-ball routine.
Oh, it was really nice. You're like, although when she dropped, it looked like she was chasing a duck.
But to get back to your question, what I learned is magic is really, really hard. And when you've been doing it for 25 years like I have, things that you've sort of absorbed over the years seem like common sense. and they're not at all.
Yeah.
And so you just realize it's really hard.
Well, it's been a while since we beat up Matt Donnelly. When we first
let me just clock back in here.
when we first saw
Turn his mic on. Would you ready?
Matt did a performance, his very first performance.
no.
Oh God! Wow, this is mean.
Okay, well,
After, no,
What-
let's do it. But
what-
it's mean.
what Piff and I said to each other as we
Yeesh.
walked out, all we said
Yeah.
as we walked out, a couple tricks did not go the way you'd hoped.
Yeah, like most of them.
Yeah. As we walked out, who said it to who? Did you say it to me?
You
or
said it to me.
I said, magic is hard. That was our only comment on your show.
In the midst of it, doing putting a whole show together is my first foray into magic. I remember just in rehearsals, just getting halfway through and just being like, man, this is exhausting. You're constantly thinking about 2 or 3 things at the same time while selling, one aspect in a major way. That's not the thing you need to be concentrating on.
Yeah.
And that's really, it can be so tiring.
What you're most worried about, the audience often can't know.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
And so, so the thing you're concentrating on is the thing you can't be conveying.
Yeah.
Right.
Because you're conveying one thing and doing another, but you can't convey what you're doing.
But even sometimes, I taught a magic trick for a theater. I made a magic trick for Punch Drunk. The theater company. They did Sleep No More originally in New York. So and it was a version of Any Drink Called For. And all the guy was doing was pouring liquid from one glass to another. Literally, that is all he was doing. And the guy was amazed, doing all this crazy dance, all this crazy stuff. And then he would come to this bit of the bar when he had to pour these drinks out, and his hands would be shaking. And I'm like, "What are you doing? You're literally pouring drinks." And he's like, "Yeah, but they might know. They might know the secrets that are going on." It's just like, it's irrelevant what they might know.
Well, on the other side of that, Teller, Tom Waits, who's worked with Teller on a bunch of stuff. Tom Waits was doing a thing called Frank's Wild Years and wanted to do some magic in it.
For the Steppenwolf Theater Company in Chicago.
So he wanted to do some magic in there. And Teller was brought in to teach Tom Waits magic and said, nothing has ever been easier. He said, Tom Waits, who's a great actor and completely in character, you told him to do this and do it naturally. He just did it.
Wow.
Teller was amazed.
That's really unusual. But the disadvantage that you have, and maybe you, Jack, were that when we started, we were really young and had no common sense and had no concept of what would be good or bad.
Right.
And so we sucked and thought we were great. And as an adult, you don't have that bulletproof
Well, it's
that
what
you were being a teenage kid.
What's his name says on NPR, that the problem with learning something is that your taste will develop faster than your skill.
And certainly that's true when you're an adult. So you starting at older like that means that you've already seen really good shows. When I started juggling, I hadn't seen a good juggling show, and so I thought this is the best juggling show in the world.
I'm 64. I still haven't seen a good juggling show.
Exactly. So it's hard to believe.
I'm waiting. I'm waiting.
I'd say that's absolutely true. That's why, advice that I've been giving is to, you said you have to work with people, but I actually gave someone a position of director, just knowing my theater background and knowing that I was worried about that taste thing. And I would fight with them back and forth, but having that voice to fight with about way dialogue should go or way jokes should go was really helpful. And then just treating magic moves like blocking. And just being like, this is simply this is simply the part where your arm goes here and your leg goes, whatever. Like, this is the way it goes. And
everybody's staring at your palm.
It's actually only very recently I started to experience what magicians describe as heat on or whatever.
Yeah.
It's only been when I was so new, I wasn't experiencing that because I was just flying. Everything's still moving too fast.
But you
for
also
me.
weren't doing those tricks.
That's true. I wasn't
Cups
trying
and
myself
balls
to do.
is like, you got heat everywhere. But like something like a tossed out deck, there's literally no heat.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We're going to take a break and do a commercial. Do you hate stepping on the scale? Maybe it's because you haven't met the right scale. Could that be possible? I think so. I use a Withing Smart Scale and I step on it daily. Willpower is key. Do you ever miss a day stepping on your scale, Guido?
I do sometimes. I just forget. I just get in the shower and skip
I
it.
never do. Matt, do you forget?
To step on the scale?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I never do. You want to have the right tools. Tracking my weight helped me lose, and now my Withings scale helps me keep the weight off. Withings smart scales are known for exceptional user-friendly design. Step on and data from every weigh-in syncs automatically to the free app for iOS and Android. So here's where I slide you the deal. You can get 25%. That's a lot of money.
25%
A lot
off
of
is
these
high.
things are
That's-
just like tiny amounts.
Yeah.
1%, that's almost a quarter. You can get 25% off a Withings Body Cardio, which is the sale. That's the one you want. The Withings Body Cardio right now with the coupon code PENPAL25. Go to withings.com, WITHINGS.com. Get 24% off Body Cardio. Body Cardio is their fanciest, schmanciest Wi-Fi scale. You can get it all for 25% off right now with promo code PENPAL25. That's PENNPAL 25. All you remember is the double N. That's 24% off coupon is exclusively for Sunday school listeners. You won't find it anywhere else. So go to withings.com, pick out a body cardio scale, and use code PENPAL25. I guess that 25 reminds you 25% off, right?
That's right.
And the thing about Masterclass that is interesting is you're trying really hard because it is, although I think children who are serious about magic would enjoy it, it is for adults. It is for adults. And therefore, we do a lot of the theory stuff, a lot of the discussion stuff, because you don't have time to stumble around. You know, the wonderful thing about learning, what are you doing?
I'm taking a moment to say hello to Emily Gillette.
Oh, I see.
Now I've done that.
Okay. When you're a child learning something, and whether this is a language or whether this is juggling, whether it's a musical instrument, you have all this kind of glorious time to be bad.
Yes.
You know, Springsteen, who I always like to bring up for you, talks about getting his first guitar and playing an E chord for 2 weeks.
Yep.
Just running around playing an E chord.
Yeah.
And just loving the sound of the guitar and the feeling and all of that. And when you first start in magic, when you first start with cards, you can spend 50 hours just fanning them out and shuffling them.
Yep.
And getting the feeling of that prop. And there's this kind of sense of play that's there so deeply. I mean, Teller would talk about he was fascinated by a little prop that had a false bottom and was a little box that fit in another box. And he said it was like he was sick and home from school, and he said probably 1,000 hours putting that in the other, thinking about it and doing it. And that's the kind of thing that if you're sick, I mean, Teller was younger than 5 when he started.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing you can really do and really appreciate it. And you have to come in from that. And everybody watching Masterclass, I mean, everybody, even if it's a 12 or 13-year-old child who's going to have that much interest in magic, has already gone past the stage of just romance and is actually trying to get some stuff done.
Yeah.
You know, and that's why we cover a lot of the theory. And it's what's so fascinating about watching you learning magic, Matt, is that we've watched everybody start out with magic chops and then try to add in comedy and performance.
Yeah.
And very rarely, the other example I think I saw was Dean Cameron, Cameron, who learned magic pretty late. He already had, it was amazing to see him work because I watched Dean do a couple of, I mean, just for friends, very simple magic tricks that I'd never seen done with that much performing and comedy skill. It was a really weird, because anybody that developed that performing and comedy skill had moved on the tricks too.
Yeah.
So seeing a simple trick done by someone who is very, very skilled is a fascinating thing. And I think that if somebody is interested in the psychology behind magic and also some of the theory behind magic, we try to take people from that position. And although we teach them simple tricks, it is always with a lot of the theory and the ideas, because a lot of the stuff behind magic is pretty fascinating. I mean, in the stuff that Teller and I are writing now, I'm trying more and more to bring magic terminology and magic ideas into the performance of magic. You know, I was just telling you before we came on, Handsome, that we got this bit we're working on where the premise is that there is effect and method. And just using those in terms, which are not very in terms, it's not even much of a difference in the way those words are actually used, but there's a slight term of art in the way those are used in effect and method. Effect being what the trick looks like, and method being how you do it, which is what you would guess. But still, those are used with a little bit more information within magic than they're used in just the pure general use. But using that as part of that, I'm fascinated by the idea of teaching, as we've been our whole lives, our whole careers, the two of us, Teller and I, of teaching people a little bit of magic and then going another step. And it's not teaching them magic, then burning them with that knowledge. I remember when we were first doing the cups and balls with the clear plastic cups, a well-known magician, not well-known, well-known in magic magician, not well known to the general public, watched us do the clear cups and balls and said, then you need a real punchline that finally at the end says, fuck you to the people. You know, finally says, aha, we were lying to you all along. And I remember going, yeah, I think that's the way you think of it, but that's not the way we think of it. Yeah. What makes the cups and balls beautiful is that the premise continues through. And one of the things that we like to do with our stuff is not do that big change up surprise ha jokes on you, but have the miracle, the real magic build out of a collective thing instead of an us and them thing. And I'm hoping that comes across a little bit in the Masterclass, because we really break down probably, in my opinion, others differ, in my opinion, the best thing that Teller has done of his solo stuff is the coins into the fish.
Yeah, I think most people believe that.
Yeah, I don't think Teller does.
There's a huge Shadows camp that really will march
huge
in the
Shadows
streets.
camp. There's a huge Red Ball camp.
I'm Red Bull camp.
What's that?
I'm Red Bull camp.
Oh yeah, you better than the fish, coins into the
You
fish.
can't compare. It's like choosing, brothers and sisters. But
you do
if
have a
I had
favorite
to-
brother
if I
and
had to
sister, don't
shoot-
you?
Yeah, I do. If I had to shoot one of them in the face, it would be the fish.
Okay,
And I keep
but I
the Red
want to hear
Bull.
which one of your siblings it would be.
Uh,
You had to shoot one of them in the face because you have two siblings, right?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah, which one would you shoot in the face?
The one that stole my. I don't know.
I'll tell you, the thing I want to say about Masterclass and what I've been the thing that I've being around you guys, and then especially and then I'm reading Handsome Jack's book right now as well, and the writing is so important. And some people, why coming to it from a class, why teaching a class at USC, why coming to a class for a Masterclass, I think is important, is because most people just go to the internet for reveal videos to just learn the method, and thinking that the theatrical part of it will come easy. And then when you're around working professional magicians, so many little choices in the writing and big choices in the writing matter a ton to the finished product and how much
But
it
also,
works.
this is, I'm always offended by this, and it's funny because we have made our career on supposedly giving away magic.
Yeah.
But I have people who are very close to me, close friends, say to me, I wanted to see how that trick was done, and I went to the internet and figured it out.
Yeah.
And that is not how the trick is done.
Yeah.
Right.
The method stuff is never showing you how the trick is done. How does Bob Dylan do Blonde on Blonde? Well, the guitar is tuned E, A. No, that's not the way it's done.
Yeah.
That's not where it is. And just reading the lyrics to Sad-Eyed Lady of the Lowlands does not tell you what Sad-Eyed Lady of the Lowlands is.
Right.
And that's what the method is. Method is I'm going to get a lyric sheet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's a lot more going on.
That's one of the things I say to my students, and I hadn't thought this till I had to articulate it for them, is that people think a magic trick has a secret, and the secret is what makes a trick work. Well, the secret, or what magicians would call method, is what makes the trick possible, but it's not what makes it deceptive. Like a false transfer, which is pretending to put something in, from one hand to the other, and making it vanish. Well, that in and of itself would not fool anybody. Taking a ball, pretending to put it in your left hand, and really keep it in your right hand, that's a fundamental method that magicians use all the time. In and of itself, it fools nobody. It's everything around the method that makes it deceptive.
Well, one of the things is and Teller talks about this, and because I've seen Teller do this, I have been pitching, and we may see it if there's another season to fool us. You may see it because I've been pushing Teller hard. I want to do a bit where we just show how Teller does the French drop. And that's a little bit in Masterclass. You have a little sense of that.
Yeah.
But, Teller is not technically even in the upper echelon of magicians. You know what I mean? Teller cannot handle a deck of cards tremendously. Teller cannot do any of the coin rolling. Teller cannot do any of the manipulative stuff. He's not fabulous at none of it. And yet, if you watch Teller, me, who's watched him for 45 years do this, if you watch Teller pick up a tinfoil ball in his right hand and place it in his left hand without really placing it in his left hand, it is astonishing.
I remember when what was that piece you did, Misdirection with the cigarette?
Yeah.
I remember being in rehearsals and making him do it over and over again for me. When he puts the cigarette in the hand.
Yeah.
I remember I just made him do it over and over and over again because I was like, that is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It melts away.
What Teller is good at is the actual level of magic that everybody's going for. And it's amazing that he does it with sloppiness on every other front. And it's not even, acting is not really the fair way to do it. You
Right.
know? It's not even the fair word to say, 'cause acting makes it too broad. It's a level. And we talk about this so much in Masterclass. It's that level of stuff that every magician knows they're supposed to do, and they don't do. We're working on this new trick, And I realize that I'm working with someone who is perhaps the best in the world at this, as I'm trying to learn the move. Teller and I are creating a move. It's a brand new move. And Teller was talking to Handsome Jack about it and getting in touch with other people on how to do it. And he's coming with the move. I have to do the move. I got to do it. And Teller has, of course, designed the move for me to do. And I'm working on it a little bit, and it's sloppy and terrible. And then Teller just says, do it for real a few times. What are we really doing? What are we really doing? Just move that over to your other hand. Just do it. And to me, it's like when you hear that professional hardcore jazz musicians will say, I'm going to play the melody in every key.
Yeah.
I'm going to play it in every key first and just get a feel for it, get it into my hands. Or I'm going to write out the part that I'm going to improvise. And the thing is that you hear all these people saying, well, I don't need to write out the Charlie Parker thing. Charlie Parker. Well, yes, he did. And he did play it in every key. He did do all that stuff. And you think you've got a shortcut. You don't. And I've watched Teller, who's been doing magic as long as anyone now, and better than anyone. And Teller actually will sit there and do a move he's done a zillion times and say, well, what would I really do? I was watching him work with a deck of cards the other day, working on the props, and it was just like, what would I really do? What would I really do? And I see everybody skipping that step. Everybody goes, well, I know what it's like to put something in one on the other hand. I won't do it. Well, Teller doesn't.
And he also keeps his practice is a high standard as well. You watch him practice a move 1,000 times, like, sitting on a computer or something like that. He'll still practice something. And he gets mad at himself in those little moments.
Well, at least the temper tantrums have stopped. When I used to share an apartment with Teller, we would be working on a trick and we'd talk over it and have it down. And there'd be something to work on, and then I'd go and I'd be reading in the other room or watching a movie, and Teller would be in his bedroom a ways away, and you would hear screaming, crying, and punching the walls. And this is over trying to drop a coin out of his hand. The stakes are very high for Teller.
Magic's a strange thing as well, because it's like people get hooked on the slang or the move or whatever. Like when I was growing up, I learned the color changing pen knives, and there's a move you can do where you can spin it round and the knife changes in as you spin it. It looks amazing. And so you get hooked on it, just like, Teller with the little box. Whereas in comedy, people get hooked on like, oh, I went out and I did a set and I crushed, and that's what they get hooked on. Whereas magic, we get hooked on this private thing, and then we have to turn that and make that public, and it's like it's a strange thing to come around to going, oh, well, now I want to perform for an audience.
But it's also different because if you're sitting playing guitar and working on a song, the net effect of the song for you and the net effect of the song for the audience are the same. You may know the song better, you know the construction of it, but when you play that chord, when you go from the G to the A, and you want that feeling of going up, and you're playing that on the guitar, that feeling that you're going to get hearing that is very similar to the feeling that the audience will get hearing that. When you put those words together, they get that. And with magic, you have two different things happening, because the feeling you're going to get alone working on it is different than the feeling the audience is going to get. That color-changing knife, the beauty that you see in it is the same as the audience is going to see, but you're also enjoying doing the move.
Yeah. I was trying to work out, because I think there are so many. The problem with even talking about it is there are so many different kinds of magic, and in that thing with the color changing thing, I'm experiencing it the same as the audience, because it looks like it does students. But there are other times when, like, it's exactly what you say. What you're doing has no relation to how the audience is experiencing it. Yeah. The journey of the prop, for example, the watch, the journey of that watch has no relation to the audience's experience of that trick. No relation. So in something like that, it's a completely different experience.
And it's just, you can, there is some magic, and people get hooked on that kind of magic.
That's what I mean. People get hooked on that stuff that you do, and you go, oh my God, that looks amazing. And it's like, you get this like visceral, like almost addiction to it, and people just plunge into magic. Whereas in stand-up or comedy, nobody like writes a joke down the page and gets hooked on that part. It's when they tell it or they, they crush that, that's where they get hooked.
So when we teach, Teller, this is so great. We had written out the directions for that you put together from that. I'd done the VO for that. And then Teller started digging in and even sent you different pictures.
Yes.
Even sent different pictures.
Yes. And so I'm trying to think of where we can edit this out. I'm trying to think of where to jump into this. So there's this workbook that we're talking about, which is half of it is instructions how to do tricks, and half of it is more this intellectual, theoretical stuff you're talking about, which we'll talk about in a bit, I think.
Sure, go ahead.
But the instructional stuff, I said to the Masterclass people, I said, this is going to need illustrations, because all the tricks you teach, I was writing how to do the tricks, and I think the two work well together. Watching someone on video do it and then reading about how it's done, I think doing both of those.
Well, we should also say, and this is weird because we are telling people that the Masterclass, which is on video, they should look at. I always tell people who are learning magic, there's a lot of stuff you can learn on video. There's a lot of stuff you can learn people talking about it, but go to books. And one of the reasons I love using books for magic is because of the stuff that's left out.
Yeah.
Because you have to imagine it, and then it becomes more you. Yeah. It's happening more in your head.
Yeah, you have to ponder it much more than just watching a video. You watch a video and you sort of think you're absorbing something.
But then you're also doing it like that person in the video.
Yeah.
Whereas if you read it in the book, you're doing it like you.
Yeah, you have to engage in it intellectually, which with video, it's something you just absorb, and you're not engaging.
Right.
You don't have to engage your brain the way when you're reading. So I wrote up all the tricks, the instructions, as a supplement to it, and then I said to them, these are going to need illustrations. I think line drawings are probably the best. And so they said, well, can you send us photos of what the illustration should be like? So I took photographs. They were mostly my girlfriend's hands, and she's a quite accomplished magician, as you know. So she posed for most of the photos, and I sent them, and they did line drawings, and they laid out the book with the line drawings. And then somebody, and I don't know who, either maybe you and Teller or maybe somebody at Masterclass, decided the line drawings weren't great or weren't what they wanted, so they put my photos in there, and they sent me a version with the photos. I went, I never intend these photos to be used, because it's got, they were shot in my apartment, and like my dirty underwear is on the floor.
And she's naked.
And she's naked. And I didn't want Penn to see these. And so, but what they did is they
Funny, some people smoke cigarettes after sex. Magicians just pose for photos where they do magic moves.
And so they sent me this with the photos. But what they did then is they photoshopped them. They took all the background out, and they turned them black and white, and they're gorgeous. They look great. And then when they sent me the last version of it, a couple of the photos, and they've got her beautiful, delicate, feminine hands, and then all of a sudden there's this photo of this big, fat, meaty guy's hand, and I'm like, what the hell is this? And so I'm like, this photo's wrong. It's no. And they go, Teller sent us that photo. And I'm like, let me finish.
That beautiful, manly hand.
And so when I see, and that's the thing about magic is, he was focusing on one aspect of it, and I was focusing on another aspect of it. I'm like, this grip is wrong. And then I look at it and I go, okay, what is Teller getting at? What is he conveying with this photo? And I went, I know what he's conveying. So I retook it, with her hands to convey what Teller is to get. So there's the consistency. But it's interesting getting an idea through a photo of what Teller's thinking of the move versus what I was thinking of the move.
In the juggling world, the video has accelerated the improvement of everyone.
But not because, I don't think it's because of the technique, but it's because of knowing it's possible. I think it's
that's
aspirational as opposed to instructional.
Okay.
That's been my.
That's certainly possible.
That's my analysis.
Fight back.
I disagree.
Aren't there new card kids who are better than the finger flicking kids that we?
I think it's a different thing.
It's a game changer.
But that's very similar to juggling.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a juggling thing more than a magic thing.
Which side of that do you fall on? Do you think that Penn is right, that it's just that, now I know that can be done? Or is it, I learned it from this and so it was faster for me?
I think it's a little bit of both in that.
That was the fun in that.
Oh, Goldilocks. Unbelievable.
Because juggling and this cardistry we're talking about, the fancy moves with cards, which are very flourishy, they're something that can really only, a lot of them can really only be conveyed with video. You can write them up in a book, but it's all about movement and it's very kinetic. And it's kind of impossible to read some of that stuff from a book. Not impossible, but very difficult. Whereas you see someone do it in a video, then you get an understanding of it that enables you to work on it.
I think it is both, because I think that...
See, Penn agrees with me. It's both.
Oh, man.
But I think that if you're talking about going from 5 clubs to 7 clubs, I think that's mostly aspirational. But if you're talking about an actual move, I think you have to learn the technique too.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But now, what are the intellectual ideas that we're covering?
Well, that was kind of interesting because half, I think, I don't know the exact percentage, but I think about half the class is the tricks you teach, and half of it is the ideas about magic. And so it's divided into chapters. And so there's, I think, like 6 theory chapters and 6 magic trick chapters approximately. And so what they did, I'm guessing I wasn't there, is you came up with the topic, or they asked you a topic, and the two of you riffed on it for a while.
Yeah.
And they edited it down. And so then it was my job to take these insane ramblings and turn them into a cohesive essay. But do it without transcribing what you said or just repeating what you said, but taking these ideas and sort of expanding on them and adding and giving them a bit more structure, like you would with a written essay, and which was really fun and interesting. And sometimes I'm like, I was trying to figure out what the hell you were talking about. And the first thing I did was I wrote it in first person as if you and Teller wrote it. I wrote it as Penn and Teller, which was a fun exercise. And the reason I did that is because there's lots of general magic theory, like don't repeat a trick, don't tell the audience what you're going to do in advance, just simple, basic Magic 101 stuff. But then there are a lot of very idiosyncratic and personal ideas that you and Teller have that I think no other magicians have ever thought of, and those are in there. And I didn't want those to sound like general magic knowledge ideas. I wanted those to be clear that they were coming from you and Teller, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to write it in first person. And I did the first draft, and the Masterclass said, no, all our books are in third person. So I had to rewrite it all in third person, and yet still convey that the Penn and Teller ideas are Penn and Teller ideas and not magic world ideas.
What are the ideas that seem so outside the magic world?
Well, the one that I had the most trouble with was talking about cause and effect. And
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Because I see that backwards.
And that's you see it different than I've always thought about it. And that's something that also that magicians don't talk about a lot. And what you talk about is that there needs to be cause and effect in magic. And you would think in magic there wouldn't, because, you know, you can just, if you're a magician, you've got supernatural powers, you can just make anything happen. So an effect can happen without a cause. And what you have discovered.
Well, you know, I have always fought against that.
Yeah.
When we first did Selfish, which is the trick we do where a cell phone is borrowed from an audience member and it vanishes and then it appears inside a fish, right? And it's a trick we've done on several chat shows. It's been on Fool Us. It's been on television 5 times. We did it for 15 years in our show. And if you've seen Penn and Teller, you've probably seen us do the Selfish trick. And we wanted to do a trick with a cell phone, and Mike Close, one of the greatest magicians alive, and Johnny Thompson and Teller and I worked on that Selfish trick and banged it out, really, really focused on it. And I got this bee in my bonnet that I wanted to do a vanish that was a kind of vanish I'd never seen. And we worked out this thing that I thought was really beautiful. I really loved it. It was going to be where the person would hand the phone to Teller, who would then hand it to me, would hand it back to him, and the person on stage, the guest, the audience member. And at one point in the whole thing, I even forgot who was doing it, but one of us was copping it and doing a switch, and then something else happened, and it was just gone. So I wanted the vanish to be, I thought you had it. No, I thought you had it. Weren't you holding it? Didn't you? And there'd be this moment where in the fog of fast performance, something had just disappeared, was just lost. And man, I made a very, very strong argument for that with Johnny and with Teller. And with Close, a very strong argument. I mean, I really steamrolled in and made a really very good. The proof of how good an argument it was I convinced 3 of the best minds in magic that it was a good idea. And we also did work on it. And we put it on stage. And it was a completely empty, horrible moment. It derailed the whole trick, and after that, kind of the show. That idea, which I think I could make a case for now.
So try and do that. Make a case for, we're going to do something on stage where nobody has any idea what happened.
Well, the idea was that wouldn't it be nice if there were an object that everybody in the room was focused on, and that an audience member on stage handling it, and then all of a sudden it was gone. That seemed like something that has such a strong allegory poetically in real life, how gripping onto things just vanish, how you can have all your focus on that. I love the fact that there was all the heat in the world on it, and yet it was just gone. And I also love the fact that the moment that it happened was amorphous. I thought it was really nice. And intellectually, it's an interesting idea. It's an interesting idea because it goes against everything. I mean, I can't make the argument that it follows the rules, because it doesn't.
Yeah.
And it just, nothing there.
So how many performances does that last? Once, or a week of performances? Or
I'm remembering, probably incorrectly, 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Might have even been 2 weeks. I don't know, but it was enough to give it a real try. And one thing about Teller is when we decide to do something, he'll do it. You know, he doesn't choke. He doesn't say no. He doesn't throw it out after the first night. I don't think there's ever been a time that we've come back after a disaster and Teller's gone, okay, fuck that. Teller just goes, oh, let's do that. Let's find out what's really wrong with it. And Teller waited until I was done knocking against it. And one of my oldest friends in the world is Robbie Libben, who works for us. And Robbie's an interesting friend because my relationship with him is very, very strong, and yet we don't hang out social in the same social circles as just us. And Robbie gave me the most backhanded compliment that I actually think is a compliment I really don't think is backhand. I think I take it to heart. Robbie said, I just don't understand how you know stuff is going to get good. He said, you go out there on stage and none of us can tell where you think it's going.
Yeah.
It just looks like an absolute dead end. And then a while later, it's a great bit. And none of us know how you got there. So Teller will really support me. Most of the crazy ideas are mine. And Teller backs me up and says, let's try to find where we think we're going. And it was amazing because the way this comes around, it's why that whole cause and effect to Masterclass, it's what I'm talking about. We then took the phone, put it in a cup, put the cup on the floor, and I step on the cup and it vanishes. I say Mazel Tov as I break the cup. Boom, gone. Now, that is much, much less interesting than it being lost in the fog of performance. Much less interesting. It even reads on paper like a hack thing, you know? Oh, they put it in. And there also is no real cause and effect there. It goes into a cup and the cup is smashed. It's not that I have the magic foot that vanishes things that are put under. It's not that way of thinking of cause and effect, but it has a moment and has an instant. We were working on Elsie. You know, Piff.
The vanishing cow.
The vanishing cow. Elephant.
Elephant.
Piff kept saying, you know.
There's one word. There's one word.
that we're not allowed to say.
Piff, remember you kept saying you wanted a gunshot or a moment to make that happen?
Yeah.
And Piff was alone against Johnny, Teller, and me.
It wasn't the last time that happened.
And Piff was right. But it's trying to find what that moment's going to be and make that moment be an exact thing. So in Masterclass, I really wanted to talk about that because I'm a convert to the cause and effect school. Not because if you had real magical powers, you could just do stuff and that be it. My argument is much different.
Yeah.
My argument is that in the real world, we often don't have cause and effect. It's exactly 180 from that. It's you've lost your car keys without knowing when you lost them. They vanished without you knowing that. Wouldn't that be nice to replicate? And the answer is no. It just is not interesting. You need cause and effect. And it's really interesting how, as much as I want to fight against it, if you're going to have a card come to the top of the deck, you got to wave your hand above it before. And that idea, and I don't care if you're never going to do a magic trick for anybody in your life, that idea of what part of the human mind is constantly grasping at the idea of where cause and effect lies, and the amazing how fulfilling it is to have cause and effect work. You know, we never see proof of correlation and causation in our day-to-day life. We're always grasping at it.
Yeah.
All we want to know is what the fuck causes cancer. Just tell me that.
Right.
And we're never going to get that answer because cancer is 1,000 different diseases and has 1,000 different choices. And we want desperately to know what strand of the DNA, what
Chromosome?
what chromosome of the DNA is causes what gene is going to cause a certain thing. This is what causes people to get fat. And we're never going to get that answer. Never. Because there is no gene that causes anything. It's all this complicated thing. So you go into the theater, and if someone delivers you an actual analogy to what's happening in the real world, you're not going to feel fulfilled. It's what I always say about acting. You do not want people to act naturally. You want them to act clearly. Wouldn't it be really nice if in your day-to-day life you were able to read other people the way you can read Robert Downey Jr.?
Right.
Well, you can't, because they don't do that. Robert Downey Jr. gives you grotesquely oversimplified reactions that are the way you want to be able to read your friends.
Yeah.
And the real truth is, when you're talking to someone, even someone who's angry at you, another 30 emotions go across their face.
Yep.
It's also the aha. You know, detective stories, you have the aha, this is who did it. You've never gotten that once in your real life. That's why it's so fulfilling to have that. And that's why I say that thing that was so hard for you to understand, because I'm saying we need to have cause and effect, not because it's in the real world, but rather because it isn't.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it really fulfilling. And that's the kind of stuff we're talking about that isn't usually talked about in magic.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Piff would like to go back to the part where you said Piff is right.
I'd like to go back to the part where you said you were reading the Handsome Jack book.
Oh, well, there's actually, having you two in the room, this is important. Because you say there's a name of a Penn and Teller trick in your book that Penn says is not the name of a Penn and Teller trick.
Oh, interesting.
You call it, and I'm very interested in this trick,
Yeah.
and I can't find out about it because Penn always says, wait till we talk about it on air. And we've done 2 weeks of episodes without getting to it.
Okay, we'll get to it right now.
You call it quote of the day.
Oh, a quote of the day.
Quote of the day.
Yeah.
And he says it's quotation of the
Quotation of the day.
Oh,
Because
well,
we were careful with that word usage.
Let's pulp them. Let's pulp all the books.
okay.
Time to pulp them.
Break that down for me. The difference between quote and quotation.
It's the letters.
Quote is usually considered in very, very tight ass to be incorrect. It's like sawing a person into halves,
Yes.
as opposed to into half.
Yeah.
It's the same kind of thing. So we always called it quotation of the day. It was always up there.
Son of a bitch.
And what do you say in your book about our little trick?
That it's I don't know, but I believe I probably said something like it's my favorite thing you've ever done.
Oh, thank you.
It is, yeah. You say that, and the thing that I like salivating for this carrot I'm chasing.
And the thing I say about what I love about it is it's 20 minutes of procedure, and procedure is usually death to a magic trick. Procedure is shit you got to do to make the magic trick work, and that trick is 20 minutes of procedure, and it's the most entertaining 20 minutes I've ever seen in a magic
And
show.
we had good procedure.
You had great procedure. You took what's normally something.
What is it?
Okay, here's the gag. The gag is we get a person from the audience and we hand them a Bible. And it's a Gideon Bible. And it's an actual Gideon Bible. In the first performances, the Gideon's Bibles, everybody that we knew would take the Gideon's Bible to their hotel room and would use them in that trick.
I'm gonna interrupt you here because I collect.
But that got harder. I'm going to explain it.
Oh no, well.
I'm going to interrupt here for no reason, too.
That got harder because we were doing more shows and we were going to hotels.
Yes.
So we then got Gideon stickers that said, placed by the Gideons, stolen by Penn and Teller. Yes.
And I got one of those Bibles for my collection.
Yep.
And I said, I've got one. It's got the sticker, placed by the Gideon, stolen by Penn and Teller. And you said, we were very scrupulous about that. And I thought you were going to say, we never actually stole the Bibles. But you said, we were very scrupulous about that. We only used Bibles we actually stole.
we were doing that for a long time. And then we finally ended up, we would also have people come to us and give us Bibles that they'd taken, and then we would recycle them and threw them through.
Yeah.
What I really liked was they gave people a Bible that looked, but there were a few cases of Bibles that were bought for emergency purposes. Like when I used to juggle broken liquor bottles, I think I saw perhaps the saddest local crew I've ever seen. We got to one gig, and we would always get the bottles that I would juggle, smash them and juggle broken bottles. We would get the bottles from the bartender, go to a local bar. And there was one gig we played where our supply was down, and the bar at the theater didn't have any of the ones that looked good on stage. And the bar across the street didn't. And our crew went out and bought 5 full bottles of liquor. And then the local crew watched as our crew took the top off the liquor, Jack Daniels, and poured it down the sink so that we could have the empty bottle. Well, the Bible was like that. So a person was brought on stage. And I remember one time having the Bible in my hand, I go in the audience and say, I need someone rather trustworthy. And one time off Broadway, Walter Cronkite was sitting in the seat I always go to. And I go, well, it is the most trusted person in the world, but I guess I can't use him. It would look fishy. We get a person on stage, they sit on stage with the Bible in their hand. And at the start of the whole show, a bottle was brought out to the audience, a big jug. And the audience member would sign the bottle and then hold it in their hand, or it would be hung up high in the air. Then a guy would go up with the Bible and sit in the chair. And then we would say, we're going to pick a book of the Bible. And we would wheel out a dartboard that had on it all the books of the Bible. And did I have a joke for every book of the Bible? Yes, I did.
Please tell me the joke for Hebrews was, some of my best friends are Hebrews.
Yes, it was. Yes. Okay. So, and then the other one was, some of my best friends are Hebrews too. And we also had queued up when he hit Jeremiah, I would just snap my fingers and we'd go, Jeremiah was a bullfrog. And of course, Job was, I think he invented the Apple computer. And they were all through there, you know. Genesis was Phil Collins' old book. And Exodus was, come on, get out of here. Exodus? Okay, so
Leviticus.
I forgot what we had for Leviticus. They're all written down somewhere, but I don't know. And there was 2 books that weren't on there because they were Micah that only have 1 chapter, so it hurt the trick. So we had this beautiful board, about 6 feet square, cork, that had all the books of the Bible on it and beautiful artwork because we'd gotten it from a Sunday school book for children, so like pyramids and camels and stuff. And then I would get 3 children up from the audience, and I would give them darts. And I would say, throw the darts at the book of the Bible, and they would throw the book of the Bible, and they would hit 3 different books of the Bible, okay? Boom, 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 boom. Now, giving children, sometimes as young as 3, darts on stage in a theater is very, very challenging. And we had
Try getting your dog.
one child threw a dart really hard, and it stuck in the Bible that the guy was holding in front of him. We had, I got one in the cheek, one in the neck, one in the chest.
Oh.
And which was your favorite?
And we also had one great moment was they would throw the dart really far, just miss the board entirely. And we had our tattooed hippie redneck biker light man, who was my height and covered with tattoos, long ponytail and a goatee down to his waist. The scariest person you'd ever seen. And the dart went off stage, and this little child is on stage, and I look off stage and I go, oh Jesus, Stuart, come on stage. And he comes out in his full biking leathers, and stuck in his arm is the dart. And the child goes, ah, ah, ah. And Stuart pulls the dart out of his arm, hands it to the child and says, aim this time. Walks off stage. And then I had one of my favorite jokes in the show was we would get often a very, very little child up on stage. And they would throw the dart and miss like 5 times. Finally get like 2 feet from the board, and they would throw and it would just barely stick in. And if we had a child like that, I would put him ahead of like a 14-year-old guy who was
A darts player.
big and smart. And, was that?
A darts player.
A darts
Yeah.
player, yeah. And that child would come up and just throw the dart. And they'd go like this. And I had this wonderful rant that I would do where I'd go, I want to point something out to you. Whatever, I would know the child's name, Dave. You came up here. First of all, we had a young child up here, Mary, who I asked to do a task, and she did with total incompetence. And after 5 tries, she still never accomplished the task ever correctly. And when she finally hit it, incompetently, and not doing the task, this crowd reacted like they'd seen Jimi Hendrix and John Lennon walk out on stage right now and jam together. They went out of their minds. Cute little girl does that, she gets that. You came out here, I handed you the dart, asked you to do a task, and you got it perfectly the first time. And there was a smattering of applause from your parents and legal guardians and no one more in the theater. I just want you to know something, Dave. That's the way it's going to be the rest of your goddamn life. Competence does not matter. Cuteness does. They would do that. And then we would have people choose between the books. We get the book, have the person open the book. And then we would have dice thrown from the back of the theater up. The dice would tell us the chapter. And then the audience member would choose the verse. And then the bottle would be broken, piece of paper brought up, held out, read the verse. It was the one that we predicted beforehand. That was the trick. But the rigmarole of getting that verse selected took forever.
And the riff he had about, the little girl throwing, every aspect of it, he had a riff just that funny and entertaining about every single thing that happened.
Well, everything that could possibly happen had happened. And every time something didn't happen, we just write it for the next time.
Yeah.
So the script, because in a Broadway show, you have to have a full script.
Yeah.
And the stage manager has to have it. That had all the branches in it.
Oh my gosh.
So it had, if it hits Leviticus, if it hits this, if it hits this, if it hits this, this is where we're going to go. And the stage manager was jumping to where I'd be.
The flow chart.
So, and plus, when I saw it, the trick fooled me bad.
Yeah, it's a good trick. Really good trick. And we had things, I mean, I would stand in the most precarious position for the darts. So I was standing between the audience and the child throwing the darts. So if the child missed, it would go into me instead of into the audience. And Teller was standing in front of the Bible guy. So they would go into him instead of that. So Teller and I mean, every one of our suits had little holes all over it and stained with blood on the inside. And it was just, and people would just, because, one of the most important lines to me in all of pop music are David Bowie, Young Americans, where he says, misses a step and cuts his hand, showing nothing. He swoops like a song. He cries, where have all Papa's heroes gone, right? Showing nothing just kills me. So I would, people would not even know how we did it. The child would throw a wild throw. It would stick directly into my neck. And I would pull it out, cover it up, hand the dart back, and there'd never be a scream or what's wrong with you or anything, just showing nothing. And Teller and I were so proud when those darts were let go. And I would say, being hit by a dart, remember, I'm wearing glasses, and Teller would bring his hand up kind of casually in front of his eyes right when the dart was thrown. But I'm wearing glasses. So our thinking was a dart, it's a toy dart. There's not that much damage it can do. But sometimes it hurt like a bastard. And you could show nothing. And also the look on a child's face when they're on stage, they throw the dart wildly, it sticks in the guy's neck, he pulls it out and says, okay, try again. They just know that there's a world outside of their kindergarten.
Yeah. That's great.
So that was the trick. And Quotation of the Day closed the first half of the Broadway show. It was the closer of the first half, and a pretty killer trick, and with a level of blasphemy.
Yeah.
That it's unbelievable. Throwing darts at books of the Bible, having children do it. It was just a pretty great thing. And I remember this happened twice. I picked someone from the audience and said, take this Bible and go up on stage and sit in that chair. And twice, the person I handed it to said, I'm sorry, but you should know that I'm an atheist. And I would say, you're going to do fine with this trick. Because remember, at that point in the show, you don't know.
Yeah.
You don't
Right.
know where
Yeah,
it's going
yeah.
to go. And we also had, and this was so perplexing, we had a priest come just after the show and say, I brought a lot of our youth group here to see the show. And we love that quotation of the day bit you do. And I went, you do? And he responded, yes, because it's very important to get the Bible into people's lives. Okay.
By any means
no such thing as
necessary.
bad publicity. Yeah,
Yeah,
no such thing as
exactly.
bad
Yep.
publicity.
Yeah, we do that whole thing. But yeah, I wish I could remember. I mean, it's written down somewhere. I don't remember what I had for Corinthians. You know, I don't remember a lot of them. But
Something about crushed Corinthian leather, I imagine.
probably.
yeah.
And I don't know. I Matthew, Mark, we had them all up there, and then the bullseye was choose any one you want.
Oh,
Just stick a dart anywhere you want. So that was exciting when you get to see which book of the Bible a child would want.
that reminds me of another bit in Mofo Knows, where you had slides and you illustrated. You had a slide for every number, and the slide for the number 3 was the Marx Brothers. The slide for number 4 was the Marx Brothers. And the slide for number 5 was the Marx Brothers.
Now we could do that backwards, with the thing for 4 being the Beatles, thing for 3 being the Beatles, or I guess you could do the Who too, right? It's just boom, 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 boom as they get count down. So, if you think that you would like to learn a few magic tricks quickly to entertain a few of your friends, Masterclass will give you that.
Yeah.
The Masterclass Penn and Teller. If you think you want to take start really learning magic and getting actually good at it, I think Masterclass will get you started. You got a long way to go after that.
And if you want to know how Penn and Teller think,
If you want to know how we think, which I don't know if you want to open that can of bees.
Which is
Definitely
more
not.
important than how the trick is done.
Yeah,
Right?
Yeah.
I think so. There's if you go to Mac King's show, there are tricks in Max King's show that absolutely fool everyone, and there is no method to them. He just kind of does what he needs to do.
Yeah.
That's the level of magic you want to get to. So I want to thank Matt Donnelly and Piff the Magic Dragon for letting us be brutal to them in the show.
Oh,
Yeah.
God. Yeah. We'll never recover.
And Handsome Jack for taking our incoherent ideas and trying to make them coherent.
And for flying in from LA for the day.
And Godot for being a juggler, sitting here with all this magic talk.
Yeah, that was enough of that. Let's talk about some juggling.
And that was Penn Sunday School Masterclass.
That was Penn Sunday School.
Cha-cha-cha.
And to our listening
You become naked.
all nature sang and round us rang the music of the sea. And
Yeah, it's called, it's Masterclass. It's just Penn and Teller, right? Is there any special name to it?
I think Penn and Teller teach magic.
Penn and Teller teach magic at the Masterclass. And I think once you sign up for it, you get all the other stuff, right?
I think you can sign up for one course or all the
Oh, I
courses.
see. So you can get Ron Howard and Steve Martin.
I've got
Aaron
all the courses.
Sorkin,
Do you have them?
Yeah. Never watched them.
Werner Herzog.
Werner Herzog's French drop.